Sonido Software presents Story of a Studio, where we meet with recording studio owners and audio professionals, hear of their passions, and share their unique stories with you.
And they never find what they dream
Hey, this is Brady Hogard with Sonido Software and Story of a Studio. Today we are speaking with Tyler Seawood with TS Services. Tyler, welcome.
Hey, I'm glad to be here, man. Thanks for having me on, Brady.
You bet. No, really excited to chat with you for a few minutes today. This Story of a Studio is all about hearing the stories behind the producers, behind the engineers, behind the studios that have come about. And very, very excited today to talk with you and hear your story and get to know you better as a professional in the audio industry. Why don't you tell us a little bit to get started about your experience? Let's jump back. Let's rewind a ways. Talk about your first experiences in audio. What were some of those moments that got you interested in being a part of the audio industry?
Well, growing up, my father was a drummer, so I got into music pretty early, probably around probably like 9 or 10, and so he would play for like the local churches and everything like that, and he was like my hero at the time because I would see him play and I would sit right beside him and he would give me a pair of sticks to like air drum while he was playing actual drum. So it started there, but he was a big advocate about listening to a lot of music. So I was always exposed to different genres of music, different styles, and it was like he was kind of molding me into the musician I didn't know I was going to be yet. But it started like that. As I got a little older, I started, actually started playing drums. Took a couple drum lessons with him, and kind of branched off from there. Eventually, I just kind of developed my own kind of learning ability to just catch on to things pretty quickly. I was able to go from like beginner to like intermediate level within a few months, and then from that point, I was able to actually start gigging. I was able to like kind of get out and do my first couple gigs. It was definitely a learning experience because I was still kind of new to the whole environment of the music industry and everything like that. I was just kind of a fanatic for playing, but eventually from there, I was fortunate enough because my dad was just so invested in me. He ended up buying a bass guitar, and so he still called himself wanting to if I was going to play drums, he's going to play bass. Well, that it didn't turn out like that. I actually ended up picking up the bass and went from there. I kind of took the bass from him and learned how to play the bass and everything like that. So that was kind of a funny thing, and that ended up being one of my favorite instruments. I'm a bass player through and through. And from that point, once I learned how to play bass, I started actually composing and writing music from the bass. So I really got into audio, the recording side. That's when I was kind of introduced to the engineering aspect of it rather than just the playing side. When I started kind of writing my own music, so I would come up with these melodies on the bass. Had a sense of chords and progressions and stuff like that. So I would just kind of lay out like a basic 4 chord pattern and then come up with a melody and kind of work in a song and stuff like that. And then I had to figure out how to actually capture what I just wrote. So then I started, researching recording gear and what is the audio interface, just some of the basic things, how to record. And I think at the time I didn't even have a MacBook at the time. I think I was using, I want to say it was maybe even like either FL Studios or something maybe even like Adobe Audition. It was like way back in the day.
Mm-hmm. And about how old were you at that point?
At that time, I was probably about, I would say about maybe 15, 16. So
Okay.
that span of time, I was able to learn the drums and the bass. So, I was part of the bands in high school and everything like that. I was part of the drum line in high school. Then I joined the jazz band, and I fell in love with jazz music from there. I was introduced to that and playing bass, and that was this like that kind of set the tone because upon graduating high school, I went to college. I actually went to Eastern Illinois University, graduated with a degree in jazz studies. I actually got my degree in jazz studies on piano. So
Oh, okay.
those are I know it's crazy. I actually I went to school for piano, but what's crazy is they had me playing bass majority of the time outside of like my degree classes, because there was a shortage of bass players, actually good bass players, I guess, and they would have me kind of fill in for all of the ensembles and everything like that. But I got my degree in piano, which is kind of funny. It's ironic, but through that process, though, through learning both of those instruments and having an understanding of composition and recording, like a basics of recording, I started just really diving into the love of audio from the backside. Like I love performing. I've done gigs and everything, but being on the backside, seeing the creation from a song from start to finish, and just being immersed in that creative process for me just does it. Like there's nothing like experiencing that. And the thing about when you go through that process, you come to find like how that becomes just kind of like a lifelong thing. It's more of a it's something that's gonna last forever, and that's the part I love the most about that. When you're gigging, that moment, it's a moment you'll remember forever. But when you record and you have music out, you have a catalog of things that express who you are. That's gonna be there forever. That's something you can always go back to and relive those moments. And sometimes I prefer that over gigging more. So
Hmm.
that's kind of how I got into. I guess I don't want to skip anything. So once I got to college and I graduated from college with my degree, I'm from Chicago, so I came back to Chicago, and I started. The first thing on my mind was like, okay, I'm out of Chicago. I mean, I'm out of school. I want to get on the scene and learn the vibe and see who's out here. I want to meet whoever I need to meet to show them that I'm good enough to be in the good circles of musicians and everything like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I was at almost every jam session, every open mic, every bar gig that I could find. I was driving around the city trying to meet as many musicians as I could. Some were good, some were not. Some experiences were okay, some, but it was all part of the journey. And so, fortunately, I was able to kind of make headway and meet some of the city's greatest musicians, and I actually can call them friends. And through that, I've learned so much about just the logistics of having good character, integrity, being professional, and everything like that, and all and little I wasn't aware at the time, but those little nuggets of information that I was picking up just doing those gigs with those that caliber of people, um, it was like molding me as I started thinking about opening up a studio or running some type of production business or doing music production professionally or anything like that when I was sitting down and working with other artists, anything like that. So those skills I was already kind of learning just being on the gig with those people, and these individuals were just like upstanding people. I mean, they were amazing human beings on and off their instrument. And so that kind of like when you're exposed to that enough, it's kind of like, okay, well, I just want to do the best I can possibly, no, like, the best job I can do if I'm going to service anyone else. So um, I did a couple of years of that, a couple of years of gigging, a couple of years of meeting artists and everything like that. I started working with some artists in the studio, just kind of doing some session work, obviously, because I met them on the gig and they were like, "Hey, man, you want to come in and I got this album or this EP I'm working on. You mind coming in and playing some piano or play some bass on this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's cool." Um, they didn't know I already loved being in the studio, so I would definitely take that on. And so, and once I started doing that enough, I was like, man, yeah, I just need to do this all the time. Like I don't even want to, pack up my gear and lug it to a gig. I just want to be in the studio as much as I can. I just want to be, involved in this creative process. It's because I felt that's when I was the most creative. When I'm a part of a process. Because sometimes on the gigs, you kind of get locked in. You have to learn the songs, the set list, and you just got to kind of play it like the record. And yes, it's fun, but it's not. It doesn't allow you to express yourself as much as being a part of, the creative process of making a song, making records, and stuff like that. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, definitely made that transition, and it was funny because coming into this year 2020, it was already so much going on with COVID and everything, but fortunate enough I was able to like fully make that transition into Being an audio engineer. And so I was doing it on the side, but I was officially able to make that transition this year. And so it's been a journey. I've been worked with a few artists that have some music out now, and it's just been nothing but, man, it's been a joy, honestly,
That's
truthfully.
incredible.
So yeah.
Yeah, what a,
So that's kind of the nutshell of it. So
you bet. Yeah, and what a journey. That's really cool. So I mean, if we take a step back, then I mean, you're 15, 16, getting involved in music,
hmm
and over a few years, I mean, you broaden your understanding of music across so many different instruments, and
yeah,
really kind of thinking through the processes of what place each of those instruments plays within a band or a group. Having that experience from a musician perspective, how do you feel that benefits you today as an audio engineer and helping bands
I
perform
think
and
it.
make the best recordings possible?
Yeah, I think it's the best combination of two because I've been on kind of both sides of the glass, so to speak. So like I've been a part of gigs where, I'd be on stage and I'll be adjusting my volume because I don't want the engineer to come, whoever's mixing or whatever to come up and be like, man, can you turn your amp down? Like I'll kind of already be thinking as if I was him in the back, and I'm kind of trying to accommodate that, make his life easier because I know if I was in his position, I wouldn't want to be one of those musicians, so. I think it definitely helps, and it just tunes my ear even more because even me writing music and producing my own music because I do have music out, my own personal music out, and so that attention to detail, just having an ear for okay, what are the string parts? What are the horn parts? What's the guitar player supposed to be doing? What's the keyboard player? Where is he supposed to be in the register? Of the piano, like so all of those things I'm listening for. Um, and I'm translating that whether I'm gigging or whether I'm performing or whether I'm behind the glass and I'm engineering, I'm hearing all of that on both sides. I think it definitely made me kind of like a stronger. It had developed a stronger sense of awareness for sure. So now I listen when anything I listen to, I'm listening to with that critical of an ear, like to hear what each part is supposed to do and how they're complementing each other. So I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I think all of it kind of just made me into who I am now. Like so, yeah,
Yeah, no, that's wild. And you'd mentioned earlier your father was a big influence in
absolutely.
you getting into music. How has he had experience? I mean, is he primarily in live sound, live music, or does was he involved in recording early on?
No, he actually wasn't even like a big drummer or anything like that. He did it as more of a hobbyist type thing. It's from my experience, like he pretty much only played at a couple of local churches. And once I got good enough to, on bass or piano, I was able to like me and him would go and we got hired at a church together, which was
Mhm.
crazy. We would go play at the church. He'd be on drums, I'll be on piano, and they would just, it was definitely a bonding experience for sure. But I kind of took that. I kind of like he kind of like handed me the baton, and I just took it and ran with it because, like I took it way further than he's ever done it. I mean, as far as getting out and doing live music and gigging and stuff like that. Like he's just always been encouraging me to do it, but he was just kind of like, well, hey, you know what? I see you got it. I'm just gonna let you go. I'll take the back seat.
Yeah.
I'll take the back seat. So I'm really the first in my family in general to kind of take music all the way. And I don't see myself stopping anytime soon. So
Yeah, good for you. Good for you.
yeah, man.
So, so your studio today, TS
Mhm.
Services.
Yeah.
Tell me. I mean, I'm imagining TS is Tyler Seawood.
Tyler Seawood,
Your
yeah.
initials. Services makes me feel like you do more than just tracking or recording or mixing. Tell us a little bit about the services you offer through TS Services.
Yeah, so definitely the conventional production, so custom productions or even beats production. So whether I'm fully making a song from scratch for somebody, which I've done, I'm leaning more towards that custom production. So a couple of the artists that I'm working with, they'll come with me straight with just voice memos and say, hey, can you make this into a song? And so
Mhm.
I'll take that and I'll listen to it. I'll come up with an idea, scratch idea on piano or something like that, and then build the idea around that working with them. So that, and but I also have a couple hip hop artists that I'll just go ahead and make a beat for. If they don't, don't think they need as much of a full, instrumentation or anything like that, I'll go ahead and just make a beat for them or something like that. Mixing and mastering, definitely that's more of my forte for sure. Also do session work if they already have, if they just need a bass player on this song, or they just need a piano player on this song. So obviously you can do it kind of a la carte like that. Also some podcast editing and some audiograms and stuff like that. So working with corporations then that may need, that may do podcasting and they need me to edit it or something like that, or add music to that. It's kind of like the sound design, that aspect of it, if they want some music behind their podcast and stuff like that. So it's kind of variety. It's kind of a spread, but though I would kind of categorize it like that. So like production, mixing, mastering, podcasting, and editing and stuff like that. So those would be kind of like the pillars of it. But anything
Got it.
audio that I can do, then I'm more than willing to kind of stretch out and go for it. So
You bet. That's terrific. And you said, was it this year you went full time in
full
audio
time,
this year
yeah, this
in
year. Yep,
2020?
yep.
Awesome.
And the
And what
craziest
a
year of all,
yeah.
right?
I was gonna say what a year for that too. That
I
is crazy.
know, I know.
But look at you. I mean it's now, as of the date of this recording, it's November, and
Yeah,
you've been running this. I mean, even through the challenges of
of
COVID and
yeah.
everything else. Good for you.
Yeah,
It
man.
shows a
It's
lot about your
definitely been
character.
it's been a journey for sure because it's more of a it definitely takes, it's like a mental thing for sure, like to get your mind wrapped around like everything that's going on and be like, you know what, like no matter what, I know what I'm doing is making a difference. And I truly believe that. I mean, I believe in music making a difference in people's lives, and more than ever, we need artists to not feel like they can't create or they don't have any outlet to create, because they need to create that art, for people to
Mhm.
still feel uplifted during COVID. They need to feel like, they can, and still inspire, and that's so important to me. So like I was always anybody that I knew, still had music that they wanted to write or anything like that. I was like, man, well, let's do it. Like, I would,
Mhm.
whatever I could do to kind of get them to, go ahead and, get that out, because other people need to hear that. They need to know that there's still, art coming out. There's still people expressing themselves, that it's everything's going to be okay. Yeah, we're going to get through this year. It's going to be so like I was kind of like really advocating for that. And I feel like it worked out pretty well because a lot of people did, a lot of artists that I knew really did come out and was like, man, you know what? Like I got this Christmas idea. I know we're far away from Christmas, but it's the only thing I have right now. I just want to do it. Like I'm like, let's go, let's do it, let's go, let's make it happen, because like you need to get that out so other people can know, that hey, it's still something coming out this year. It's still something to look forward to. So yeah, I'm big advocate in that. So I'm kind of grateful that 2020 happened kind of the way it did. Obviously, I wouldn't wish COVID on anything,
Sure.
but I'm just kind of choosing like to see the silver lining in all of it for sure.
Yeah.
So that,
What a good attitude. Yeah, I'm sure that helps. That's an attribution point to your success this year as well. So tell me this. It sounds like you're very much an optimist, and you're very much supportive of the musicians in
mhm.
finding that inspiration and fulfilling their dreams. What keeps you motivated
Oh man,
and inspired to continue doing what you're doing?
very good question. I think I think for me, when I kind of unplug sometimes, because obviously it could get pretty hectic if you in the studio, you're working with people, and especially if you got artists that have a ton of revisions or stuff like that, they very nitpicky. For me, it's when I unplug and I just kind of listen to music that I have like a playlist on Spotify actually. I have a playlist on Spotify of songs that like are super super critical in like that were super critical just in my upbringing, and like they kind of were like pillars of kind of chapters in my life. So I'll literally go and listen to songs that kind of put me back in that mindset of like, man, I remember where I was when I heard this song. I remember, where my career was, where I was musically. Like I wasn't even able to play this song when I was, 15, and now I'm in my 20s and I can play it now. So it just kind of does that for me. It kind of gives me a sense of like, look how far you've come. So don't quit now. Keep going. There's more work to be done. There's more people to help. There's more ways to inspire. There's always creativity, within me. So I just need to go ahead and continue that. So that's kind of what keeps me inspired. I'll kind of unplug from all of the work aspects and the technical aspects of music and go and appreciate it again. Like
Yeah.
find a way to appreciate music as art and as a way of expression, and then I'll come back and be kind of refreshed from that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That makes sense. I love it. Well, thank you for sharing that.
yeah, no
Um,
problem.
so you're located there around the Chicago area
Yeah, in the
today.
Chicago area.
It's a very culturally rich place,
Very.
a lot of history and music. I'm sure it's also very competitive. I'm sure there's a lot of other
Oh, it's
studios out there.
man. It's
Yeah.
if man, if you make it here, you can make it anywhere.
Yeah.
And I say that like jokingly, but it's serious though because the scene here is so cutthroat is the wrong word, but it's like that. It's like it's very competitive.
Uh-huh.
And it's not in a way that um like people will look down on you if you can't play an instrument, nothing like that. But it's more so like the level of musicality is so high, and it's
Mhm.
just like, man, these guys are just where is it coming from? I don't know, but I at one point in time I felt intimidated by it, but as I hung around these guys and I just kind of picked up on what they were doing, I will say going to college definitely helped. Seriously, it helped a ton. And I had to give a quick shout out to my mentor Paul Johnston because that man literally kind of like helped me conceptualize music in a different way. The way he approached music and how he thought about chord structure and like improvising and everything like that, like it just helped me because when I came back from school, it was like, oh, I had like a little step up, from where everybody else was at. So I kind of used that to my advantage and applied it across the different genres. So if I had to do an R&B gig, I'm throwing some jazz licks in there. If I had a couple gospel gigs, I throw some R&B licks in there or some chords, So I was able to kind of blend those in. And that kind of helped me stand out a little bit because I was never really big into like emulating other musicians. I'm always big on being an individual, so I would try to just see what they're doing, but maybe kind of like adapt it to my own style and figure out how to get there. So I was able to kind of break through, break through. And what's funny is that I've traveled to like Los Angeles and Atlanta and New York, and I've heard musicians in there. And the minute you say you're from Chicago, they're like, oh man, you must be able to play anything. Like you must
Yeah.
be like you must be really. And I'm like, no, I'm normal, but like, but that's a real thing apparently.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess I'm grateful to be somewhat good.
Well, yeah, yeah. You're holding your own in the Chicago scene. That's pretty wild.
Right.
So from a studio perspective, then, with your experience and where you're at, how do you differentiate yourself and your studio, primarily your studio, TS Services,
Right.
in the Chicago scene? What makes you different and excel in that area?
It's the relatability for me. I'm able to connect because I've started from ground zero, from the pure music lover. I just like listening to songs to I can hear the difference between a dB and half a dB. Like I went from literally nothing to like the most technical, aspect of music altogether. So when I approach and I work a lot with kind of new artists that have never put out songs before. I'll work a couple of artists that I'm working with now. They've literally never released anything. They don't know anything about like how to get their songs on like Spotify. They don't know how, what is a DAW. They don't know they're purely just like, I have an idea. I don't know if it's good or not. Can you help me shape it into something like? And they have the talent, they have the potential. So I'll work with them and have the patience that I feel like a lot of other studios don't have. The ability to just kind of see where you are, assess that, do a little artist development, but it's more so like I want to help you, where you are. So don't worry too much about the price. Don't worry too much about, if you're gonna be able to get in and perform. Like I'm gonna help you get from point A to B. I'm going to show you the steps to get there. So like I think that's what sets me apart because like I have more of a like I don't. It's more like I'm just kind of like not babying people, but I'm willing to take them by the hand rather than just say, you know what, well, if you don't got it, just find somebody else. Like I'm really not that type of person. I'm more willing to help people than I am to kind of just go in for the quick buck or try to make a profit off somebody. Like I'm very very in tune with where people are because I remember being that. I remember being in a position where like I would want to learn something from somebody and they'll be very, like, I don't know, like, or they'll just, hey, go read a book or go find it on YouTube. And I hated how that made me feel because I felt like knowledge is, it's all around us. And anything that I learned is for me to share. It's not mine. I didn't create it. I didn't invent it. So it shouldn't be something that I just kind of hold in. So
Yeah.
I'm a huge advocate of sharing whatever I know, helping people along the way. And I think that shines through my studio, which makes me completely separate from a lot of studios in Chicago because Chicago in general is just like, yeah, it can be that straight up, just like if you don't have it, then they're not even looking your way. So I think
Yeah.
that's what sets me apart.
That's terrific. And I'll bet you're seeing some results from that. Have you seen
Oh,
any repeat
absolutely.
clients? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I feel pretty much everybody that works with me comes back, and I don't say
Good.
that boastfully, but I do say that because it's the character aspect. Again, like even when I was gigging and doing and I'm doing all those gigs, and again, this isn't to be boastful at all, like, but I've played at the House of Blues, I played at Millennium Park, I played at some of the Chicago's biggest venues, and I will look at every gig, no matter if it's the Millennium Park or a storefront church or a bar or whatever. I treat every gig as if it's the last gig I'll ever do. So I'm gonna give it my all. I'm gonna give it the best that I give it, and I take that same approach to working with artists in the studio. If the budget is only $20, but you have this amazing single, I'm not gonna cut corners to get just to give you anything. I'm gonna literally take the time that it needs to get that song from start to finish, and I'm gonna give that to you as a part of as for me as a token of appreciation for you to even trust me with your intellectual property, trust me with your creativity, be vulnerable enough with me to get this out and create it around what so it's that aspect for me, and that's what keeps me kind of like I'm not too much worried about that. I feel like the money will come, the word of mouth recommendations, all that'll come. I just have to be I have to remain integral, and I have to keep my character consistent because that's what's gonna stand versus you know just trying to get in and exploit people like it. So that's kind of my approach on it. It's not for everybody, for sure. It's not for everybody, but that's just how I was raised, and that's just how I've been. So I'm just
Yeah.
kind of translating that over to my studio, and that's how it's been, and it's been working out great. So I don't
Good.
have any complaints with that. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're building your brand, your personality, and it works very well for your studio. That's terrific.
yeah.
So with all that in mind, I mean, you've had an incredible year. You've had some awesome experiences. Tell us about maybe one of your most memorable experiences working with an artist or working through your studio.
Oh
Is there
man.
anything that stands out?
Oh, a few a few things. Um, it's crazy because I have this one artist. And I can shout her out. Her name is Claire Bryant. She just released her EP. So we worked on this EP. We started in July. We just released it November 6th.
Nice.
So what was funny about that process was that everything was done. So around you're talking July. So we're talking like height of COVID. Studios weren't all the way open yet. And she doesn't necessarily live near me. She's in Chicago, but she's kind of like on the northern side of Chicago. So like to coordinate, get into a studio and stuff like that didn't always work out with her work schedule. So we had to kind of work around it. So she would record pretty much all her vocals in the car,
Wow.
and, and man, when I tell you that it was interesting trying to like get that to sound like a studio recording, and she would have the music would be fine because it was all like beat based and production, like stuff like that. It was like everything was digital, but the vocals, man, it was so funny because I would spend hours just like trying to EQ all the everything out of there, get the noise out of there. But the EP actually ended up coming out, and it turned out really great. So that's honestly was the highlight of my year this year because that project was so funny to me because like all of if you listen to the EP, you would never know that majority of those vocals were cut in the car. I mean, she was like sending me pictures of like how she brought a mic stand and set it on the passenger side and tried to tilt. It was hilarious. So yeah, that was funny. But the I was so grateful to have worked on that, and people love it. I mean, I've been getting random texts out of nowhere. People just saying like, "Hey, I checked out the new EP. Man, you worked on that? Yeah, man, it was cool." So that was definitely a highlight of this year for sure.
That's sweet. That's sweet. What about challenges? What has been the biggest challenge for your studio since you've been running this year?
Man, biggest challenge I would say is man, probably financials would for not necessarily for me, but for the artist, because it's a delicate balance being able to say, to charge for the service and what it's worth, and like, hey, if you want me to mix a song, it's been a very hard to toss that, because like I have to be mindful, that it's still 2020. It people are going through a lot right now, and we did just have, an election and everything like that, but you know it's still, I still have to be mindful. So it's been a challenge being able to figure out, should I just kind of just like completely lowball myself or should I, like how can I work around that? So it's definitely it's been wavering a little bit, but I feel like in the end, I feel like as long as I can produce the best product that I can, that I shouldn't worry about it. I shouldn't worry about, if everything's gonna come through as far as the funds and everything like that. I try to just keep and stay focused on what's, being created, the product itself. So that's definitely been a challenge though, being trying to figure out, especially I had another client who sent in this, he's doing this Christmas thing, and the session had like 88 tracks in it. I was like, oh man, like that's a lot of tracks, and I don't want to say give me 250, 300 for it if you don't have it, but at the same time it's like, yeah. So yeah, it's that's been a challenge for sure. It's just getting figuring out how do I need to, yeah, go about that. So
Yeah, yeah, no,
yeah,
that's definitely challenging, and we've seen a lot of studios in the industry shaking it up and doing
yeah,
things differently than ever before with just a different year. You kind of have to flex and adapt, and
have
sounds
to.
like
Yeah.
yeah, it sounds like you've really been adapting to the needs of your clients. That's
Mhm.
terrific. Well, tell me a little bit about what you see for the future. I mean, what's your projection, and where do you want to be? Even 2, 5, 10 years from now. What do you expect for yourself and guest services?
I think what I'm shooting for is to have I'm thinking about starting it in Chicago, but having kind of like a database of uh or not even a database. I would say more of a network actually, where I can have a roster of Chicago musicians or just musicians in general, and connect them with new artists. So kind of bridge the gap between the artist and the musicians, and say like, if I have a client coming in and, because I mean, I play multiple instruments, but I love calling people in, who may even need, again, I'm all about building people up. So I know a few guys who want to get into studio work, who may, they're amazing musicians and they great players, but they may just don't know how, studio etiquette. They may not know how exactly like the difference between, when you're tracking and just playing a song on a gig. So I have a lot of guys that kind of want that experience, and then I'll have a client here who's never done a song at all. So I see myself kind of like bridging the two together and building up both sides, building up the, those guys' ability to get in the studio and, build that confidence, because definitely it's definitely a different mindset tracking than it is just kind of going and doing a gig and playing a song for like the record. So I see myself kind of building that network and kind of encouraging that networking between the artists and musicians that I know, and I think I could kind of scale that globally, to where maybe it could be somewhere in Atlanta or the Washington D.C. or something like that, where they just bear the name TS Services, but there's more of a, hey, I can contract out, this artist needs this service done, and I may not even have to touch it. I can just kind of facilitate the agreement between the two, and then that works it out on its own, and then just kind of work it out like that. So I see myself kind of growing and scaling it like that, and then possibly opening up multiple locations where that can be done, and I don't physically have to be there, but it still runs as one unit. So I
Mm.
definitely see that being the end goal. That would be great. If I could retire from that, that would be amazing.
Yeah,
So
good for you. That's great. Yeah, you're visionary and you're looking to solve problems that are out there in the music
absolutely,
space. That's terrific. So,
absolutely.
well, to wrap this up, Tyler, it's been really good chatting with you. Tell me
Yeah.
about uh, other individuals that want to get into audio engineering, want to be an engineer, want to be a producer.
Mhm.
Based on your experience and your history coming into the industry, what recommendations would you have for them?
Um, the very first recommendation, I have like two main ones. The very first one would be to listen to music, challenge yourself to listen to music differently than you have before. Um, if you're an instrumentalist, if you play guitar, like really challenge yourself to listen to a song and imagine the guitar was not even there, and listen to everything around the guitar, hear how everything is interacting with each other. That makes you so much of a more well-rounded listener, and makes you a more active listener, and that will translate beautifully if you go into audio engineering, if you go into mixing, if you go into, I mean, mastering for sure. If you go into production, you'll have a different ear for what each part is doing and how it complements the big picture of it. Oftentimes singers only listen to the singers, or the guitar player listen to the guitar player, bass player listen to the bass player. Getting out of that kind of conventional narrow focus will help you when you transition, because you'll be able to hear things and what they should be and how they should complement each other. And then if you move into mixing or mastering, anything like that, you'll be able to figure out how to carve space for each of those elements. The second thing I would recommend for sure, if you're transitioning into that, is to always be integral and make sure your character is up to par. That goes so far. You'll get way more calls if you're just your overall energy and spirit about what you're doing is there. If you genuinely love what you do, you should show it. You should really exude that, and that'll open more doors for you. Because I've been in circles where the guys may have the talent, but they don't have the character to match it. They don't have the integrity to match it. If they're not, being professional enough to show up to the gig on time, if they're only learning half the song, if they're not, all of those things play a big part in you getting calls back. Especially if you're working with artists, they want to know that they can trust you with their baby. It's literally their baby. They're coming to you and saying, "Hey, I have this baby. Let's do something with it." And they're trusting you with their vision. They're expecting you to know how to bring that into fruition for them. So if your character isn't right and you aren't integral about what you're doing, that you won't get that many calls. So I definitely advocate being as professional as you can and having your character right, and genuinely just have a heart for people, and understand things happen. But also just kind of, man, just treat people right, and I think that'll go a long way for sure. So those definitely be my biggest two.
That's awesome. Very wise words. Thank you for those suggestions.
Yeah, no
Well,
problem.
look, Tyler, very nice speaking with you today. Really, again, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for being on Story of a
Yeah,
Studio.
no problem, man.
Tyler Seawood with
Yep.
TS
Services. Yep.
Services. All right. Well, you take it easy. Have a great the remainder of your 2020. Make it great. Looking forward to hearing
Absolutely.
how it continues to progress through the
Man,
coming
thank
year.
you, guys. I mean, Sonido's been amazing so far. So I appreciate you guys for even having the tool for me to, man, make life easier. Seriously. So thank you so much, Brady, you and your team. So thanks for having
Our
me.
pleasure. All right. You take it easy.